This is Canon Fodder, episode 28, live from sunny England. Well, not sunny, dreary actually, but we are in the English countryside this week with an Agatha Christie novel that I really enjoyed, and my guest, the editor-in-chief of Corncrake magazine, called The Shield Maiden. How are you doing?
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So why Agatha Christie? Well, and actually, why don't you explain Corncrake magazine first before we kind of get into the novel?
Well, I think English literature is preferable to all other types. Like, obviously, the English language is I think it's one of the most widely spoken around the world. And it's obviously, English literature's had a big influence on a lot of countries. Because I know, my magazine advertises itself as being about English literature. So technically that would mean American literature, Australian literature, all that is kind of in a separate group. But I've kind of included it in the magazine. So the literature style that the magazine is about stuff that's kind of supportive to the Anglosphere. So I like it to focus on building a positive vision for the future, if that makes sense. I want the stories to to be not just entertaining, but to be building towards something better. Because in these spaces, there's a lot of talk of politics and things like that. But I think looking into the culture side of things is just as important as well. So that's kind of why I wanted to start a literature magazine. And it's English literature just because that's what most of us are used to, and it's a very high quality type of literature as well.
And we made our introduction maybe about a month ago. You reached out and asked to republish one of my short stories, which I was very flattered to do. And I asked to have you on the podcast to not only talk about a great mystery novel, but also to get you guys a little bit more exposure. Not sure how, we're still a pretty small podcast, but I'd like to think small and influential. So hopefully this will result in some people checking your stuff out that might not have heard of you otherwise.
Yeah, I feel I'm in a really good position to help out writers because, I know from my own writing history, it's so hard finding anyone to help edit stuff. So I can publish the works of people who aren't in a position to have any following on a Substack or their own website or anything. And it also means they can advance their writing because I'll be giving them feedback and stuff as well. So I like to think that I'm not just, taking stories from people, but I'm also giving back, in regards to that.
100%. And as a magazine co-owner and editor, I sympathize with the mission. Sometimes it's we're doing thankless work a lot of the time.
Yeah, it'd be like that.
So, Agatha Christie. I read an Agatha Christie novel in high school, or maybe it was middle school. One of formative years. It was 10 Little Indians, they called it at the time.
And that's spicy, that name.
And that's really the only exposure to Agatha Christie. I know a little bit about her. I know the Miss Marple stories. I know Hercule Poirot. Why don't you give us a little background on Agatha Christie before we get into Dr. Ackroyd, or Roger Ackroyd? Sorry.
Yeah, so with Agatha Christie, I don't know the specific dates of when she was alive. I don't think she wasn't around much before World War II, was it? I could be very wrong here because I've more been interested in the story side of things than the biography of her life. But basically, she was married to a man. I think I don't know if he cheated on her or something went wrong there, and she left him and married an archaeologist. So she spent a lot of her time in places like Egypt, cleaning off artifacts with her husband. So that's what, a lot of her stories are set in places like Egypt and the Middle East. They're all, Oh, it seems like such a cozy time back then. You would just go off on a short jaunt to Egypt for a few weeks, and I don't know.
Yes.
It seems very romantic, those times back then.
Yes. Death on the Nile. That was Agatha Christie as well, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I don't actually remember how many stories she wrote all up. But I think like she's one of the best-selling authors of all time. Work translated into many, many different languages. But yeah, it's a lot of stories she's written. Because I remember my grandmother had every single Poirot movie, and it filled the shelf of her bookshelf. Like literally, there's I don't know if it's 50 of them. It's a shockingly large amount.
And what's interesting about this story, right? Because she had a pretty long, prolific career. Born in 1890, it says here, and then died in 1976. This story, the murder of Roger Ackroyd, earlier on in her writing career, but the end of Hercule Poirot's career. He is a retired detective at the beginning of this book, and just a really, really interesting way for Christie to kind of go about this. If you want to introduce the plot of the novel by all means.
The interesting thing about that was she was writing a lot of stories about Poirot because of the public demand, but she was getting quite tired of him, which is interesting because I'm one of the public who wants more stories about Poirot.
Right. And I respect an artist to know when to retire a character, whether it's Agatha Christie or Arthur Conan Doyle with Sherlock Holmes saying that no, this is enough. We're gonna kill off Holmes here, or something that modern people just haven't been able to do. I don't know if you're into or if you know about Marvel movies or anything like that, but
not really.
The character of Wolverine got a pretty good send off, 10 something years ago. And they're bringing him back again just because he's popular. The more things change, the more they stay the same in that regard.
But she has a lot of skill.
Sorry, Agatha Christie? Oh, most definitely. Yes, definitely.
Like, if you're tired of the character and you still are writing good stories, even though you're sick of the character, like that's skill. Because as far as I'm aware, Marvel movies are just like depleting in quality.
Oh, most definitely. I didn't mean to make a one-for-one comparison. I agree that Agatha Christie had more talent in her little finger than most of these Hollywood hacks.
Yeah, that's very true.
So to move on to the novel itself, Roger Ackroyd. I don't know why I'm messing up his name. I've got the book title right in front of me. Roger Ackroyd is a man about town. He lives in a small English village that is mostly known for people coming in and out on the train. I think that's pretty fair to say, yes?
Yeah, something like no one goes into the town, but it's like an important changeover location.
Right. So he lives in the second biggest house in the neighborhood. He's a widower. He is friends with a widow, Mrs. Ferrers, who lives just down the lane. They've been putting off an engagement to one another, although it's very clear to those in town that, yes, these two are kind of going to be meant for one another. Mrs. Ferrers dies suddenly, and that alerts the town doctor, Dr. Shepard, his sort of nosy yet house-ridden sister Carolyn, and the rest of the town. Before we move on, let's talk a little bit about the Shepards, maybe, and Mrs. Ferrers.
Did you remember if the story went in too much about Mrs. Ferrers' character? I thought she was more like I don't know, not a plot device, but she was kind of. She seemed a nice person, but other than that, I don't really remember her much. Other than she was the interest of
Save for the
Ackroyd.
murder. Save for the murder, she
Yeah,
seemed like a lovely person.
yeah.
Yes, so it's revealed in a letter to Mr. Ackroyd that Mrs. Ferrers was responsible for her husband's death, and he's sort of a horrible drunk, a brutish husband. No love lost really as a reader for the late Mr. Ferrers, but this does create a tension between Roger Ackroyd and herself, to the point where she can no longer live with the guilt, and it's assumed that she has killed herself. Uh, any thoughts there? I want to get your thoughts on Dr. Shepard and especially Caroline, who I think is probably the most interesting character of the book. She seems to steal every scene that she's in.
Yeah, she is quite interesting. But then, like, I think I noticed a lot in Agatha Christie's work. She likes to have characters which are both intelligent, but then not necessarily the brightest people somehow at the same time. Like if you read other of her work, she has a recurring character called Hastings, and he even I think he even lives in the same house as Poirot. But they work on a lot of cases and stuff, and he's similar. Like he will help Poirot solve cases, but at the same time, you wouldn't look at him and think, wow, so intelligent.
Yes, he's. I guess the Higgins character later becomes sort of the Watson to Poirot's.
There's occasionally a dumb policeman somewhere.
Right. And one of the tropes of the mystery genre is sort of the hapless local detective, and we get a little bit of that as well here. The local detective, whose name escapes me right now, but he's convinced of the guilt of Ralph Patton, and actually, let me back up a little bit because we haven't even gotten to the point that Roger Ackroyd gets murdered. He's going to reveal that Mrs. Ferrers was the murderer of her husband, that she was being blackmailed, and that there was a house full of people at Ackroyd's estate that could have been the murderer. Fair, unfair?
Yeah, because he's killed because in the story we don't know fully why he's killed. That's what it seems like when you're reading that part. It's quite confusing because he has his mysterious letter, but when they break down the doors, obviously the mysterious letter is gone.
Right.
So
the police arrive. Obviously, Dr. Shepard kind of
got a mysterious phone call.
Yes, he gets a mysterious phone call saying that that Mr. Ackroyd is dead. We're not sure who makes the phone call, but by the time that Ackroyd gets back, the butler opens the door to Ackroyd's study, and there he is, dead on the floor. All signs point to Ralph Patton, who is
sneaking in the window.
Yes. He snuck through the window and murdered his stepfather. Ralph Patton is the stepson to Roger Ackroyd of his previous marriage. All signs point to them having a pretty decent relationship growing up until recently. Ralph is sort of, I guess, maybe caddish is a good word to describe him. Unserious.
Yeah, he's too the coin sift through his fingers far too fast.
Right. Yes. He's bad with money. A young man about town. It's recently been said that he is to marry his cousin by marriage, Flora Ackroyd, which by all accounts is a pretty good match. People say Roger Ackroyd is happy about this. And the thing that seals Ralph's guilt more or less is that Ralph was not supposed to be in town that night, that his arrival at an inn in town rather than staying at the estate leaves more questions than answers. Roger Ackroyd did not know that Ralph was in town.
Yeah, it kind of builds up the idea that there's trouble between the two men, like a motive.
So Dr. Shepard, we're going over the plot because this is a mystery novel. The mystery novel is pretty much all plot. We know a little bit about Poirot. We get a little bit of color for the characters here, but when you're talking about Agatha Christie, especially, the plot is kind of what matters. I have a couple buddies over at Tukey's Mag, or Tucky's Mag. I'm not sure how those idiots pronounce it, but they were talking about how the only writers that really care about plot more than, say, other aspects of the book are your Christie types, are your murder mystery writers. And I think that's pretty fair without being dismissive to an entire genre.
Well, it's like really important because everyone has their thinking caps on more than they would during a romance novel, for example. So it's like if you don't get the details right, everyone will go, well, how did this murder happen when this person was in a completely different location? So it's like they kind of have to be.
I don't know how many films you watch, but are you aware of the Knives Out films?
No.
Well, so Rian Johnson, he's a director in Hollywood. He made 2 whodunit mystery films, one called Knives Out and then the sequel Glass Onion. Really just horribly made films in my opinion. And he gives away, well, in the first film he gives away who the murderer is and then kind of does a lot of winking and nodding at it himself, I'd say, to try and trick the audience. It's a he tells you who the murderer is and then convinces you that he was being smart and clever. And then the second film, he just makes a bunch of conveniences up to forward the plot. I only bring this up because the whodunit has fallen on hard times, let's say, unless you know anything recently that people should check out.
I've been reading old literature more than recent stuff, to be honest, because I don't know. I mean, I just don't necessarily like stories set in bustling cities in the modern age. I want my mystery without mobile phones involved.
No, that's a fair point. I think that's part of the reason I did not like the BBC Sherlock series.
Oh, that. Oh, yeah. I was very young when I saw them first. Like, wow. There's a few that I was like, oh my god, this is awful.
Yeah, they did do an episode. They redid. Yeah, they redid the first episode set in Victorian times, which I thought was nice. But yes, I agree. After season 1, the writing kind of takes a nosedive.
I just hate it when because obviously Arthur Conan Doyle's stories are unique and interesting, and even when Moriarty's involved, it's not like the world revolves around him. But with these modern Sherlock, the quality of the story, everything that Arthur Conan Doyle wrote about was like, in the bin, let's just have every single episode this mortal combat against Moriarty, which just isn't fun.
I don't want to sound like I only hate things because I did like the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock movies.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that they were well done. I thought that Jared Harris as Moriarty was perfectly cast.
But that was...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, yeah, because I've seen the Robert Downey Jr. ones, and I think that because they're set back in the day, and yeah, there's Moriarty, but none of the other story lines involved were ignored in favor of him, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
It wasn't just the Moriarty versus Sherlock show. It was actually about Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, definitely. I liked, and I mean, I could go over all the murder mystery shows that I like because I've watched quite a few. Less so reading, just because it's just not been a a genre that I've particularly picked up. Though I did enjoy this book.
Try Jeremy Brett. It's all available on YouTube. He is a Sherlock Holmes. It's almost. I think it is. I think most of them are. They're not black and white, but they're almost like they're that old. But he makes a great Sherlock Holmes.
Wonderful. I will look that one up. So the police suspect Ralph. Flora, his bride to be, is distraught at this. She believes that he's innocent, obviously as a betrothed would, and she, Dr. Shepard, and the police go out to Shepard's new neighbor, who is, we don't know who he is. We know he's a French fellow, or at least foreign. We know that he keeps to himself, and that he's a fiendish gardener, I guess we could say.
Because he almost threw a melon onto.
Yes, and he's also incredibly polite, which makes the ending a little bit more bitter, actually.
That just like the ending, the twist. I'm sure I've seen a movie about this before, but the ending, it always, like, I don't know how Agatha Christie does it, but there I was, caught out, even though I'm a massive fan who've watched so many movies and read so many books.
Yes,
I was so.
And I mean, we're gonna do spoilers on this episode. We do spoilers in every episode, but with the murder mystery, we kind of give away the ghost. But I'll tease it to the end, that way we keep people involved. So Poirot is brought in by Flora to untangle this pretty what is originally thought to be a pretty straightforward crime of passion. There's several pieces of evidence that suggest that no, this was not Ralph coming in and murdering his stepfather for the inheritance or whatever, and then dashing off into the night without being seen. No, there's motive, there's opportunity for several characters in the book that we could go over if you'd like.
I think some are more like they seem almost irrelevant, like whoever the big game hunter dude is. Like,
yes, the colonel. Yes.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, he's there, but who cares?
Right, but, right. And he's but I want to. I guess we might as well name the characters and then show how they're not.
I don't remember his name, to be honest.
Yes, his name was Crud. Blunt. His name was Blunt. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were saying his name was Crud.
No. Major Blunt, Ackroyd's big game hunter friend, who's actually. We'll get to it, but. Yes, there's various evidence, whether it's a moved chair or a dictaphone, which if anybody doesn't know what dictaphone is, it's kind of like a tape recorder almost, right?
Must do they like were they invented long before tapes? Like they seem to be like very, very old.
I'm not 100% sure on how old dictaphones are. I'm guessing that though, they probably. Well, I mean, you can make recordings off of vinyl, so I'm sure that, and also like wax canisters were the earliest, for like gramophones and stuff like that. So I'm sure while not on tape, he was using some sort of dictaphone that used either vinyl or wax. To make the recording.
But that detail is actually only revealed at the very end.
Right.
Because there was references. Poirot was asking the secretary dude.
Yes.
Whatever secretary dude's name is.
Yes, I've got a list of characters right here on this handy dandy Wikipedia page. The secretary's name was Jeffrey Raymond, who his motives are all, him and the butler are kind of looked at as suspects originally. You always look at the butler, right?
Yeah.
And a personal secretary is kind of at the
Yeah, they know
same level.
things.
It's always them, right? Or there's Ursula. She's the parlor maid. She's new to the staff. People don't know much about her. There's a case of some missing funds from Ackroyd's bedroom. People think that Ursula's been stealing. It's all very suspicious. And Poirot, given his talents as a detective, given his sort of special brand of genius, he's able to take all of these bits of evidence, all these circumstances, all of these kind of weird coincidences or happenings, and make sense of them just by asking questions and being a pretty genial, respectful kind of guy. Let's talk a little bit about Perot as a character, if you'd like.
Well, I mean, he's my preferred style of detective because he doesn't really have a convoluted personal life that gets in the way of the story. Because when people have to go home to families, then they're either awfully neglectful, or else their family is involved. And that's part of the reason I don't like modern ones, because they make sure this person's love life, for want of a better word, is involved in it, and that's just because you want to be drawn into the story, the mystery of the murder, and not be a fan of the detective, if that makes sense.
And I would say that's actually a big difference with American crime and mystery novels, as opposed to your British whodunits. I think of Dashiell Hammett books or Raymond Chandler books. When you read The Big Sleep, you're invested in the character. If you read what's it called? The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett, you're invested in Sam Spade, especially if you watch the film and you get Humphrey Bogart and you get, the noir genre, right? It's very much about the character. He's usually a upstanding, square-jawed gentleman who is kind of world weary. He understands the criminal element, let's say, in the world that he's entering in, and it's a little different across the pond.
Because I think, obviously people do feel attached to, Miss Marple or Poirot or Sherlock Holmes, but yeah, it's not all about their emotions. It's about the story, and but that's another thing, and I do want to mention, because you're talking about differences between American and British detective stories. Another thing that I like about Agatha Christie is that the humanity of the people and the victims and the emotional pain and the consequences of crime isn't just thrown in the bin. I've seen, I know they run them on TV these days, NCIS, those ones. And it's like someone has been raped, 5 children murdered, 3 terrorists put in prison for life, and someone's having a birthday party at the end of the episode.
Right.
And it's just a bit, it makes the humanity and the crime and all that just seem so insignificant. Whereas at least, Agatha Christie doesn't put me into a depression with the sheer, it's not like it's meant to be traumatizing. But on the other hand, yes, there still is, yes, there's sobering thoughts to be had about human behavior.
Yeah, there's a bit of psychopathy with the end of an NCIS or a Law and Order, where everybody kind of has a group hug around the chalk lines of where the body used to be.
Yeah, it's a bit like that.
So Poirot is going through the evidence. He's interviewing people. He's sneaking around the bushes at one point to hear a conversation. Shepard's uncomfortable at this, which leads to a pretty humorous scene with himself and Poirot and the people having the conversation, which are Major Blunt and Flora, actually. More on them a little later. And it all comes down to Poirot unmasking the actual killer, who is Dr. Shepard himself.
Yeah, see, I'm so not used to an Agatha Christie having the murderer as the main victim, and the way she's written it, Dr. Shepard is your local friendly doctor. Like, you would want him to be your doctor, but actually, he's killed numerous people, kind of thing, you know?
Yes, no, he's a he's a bloodthirsty killer with a genial smile. And the one thing sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying he very much kills for his own personal convenience, because he knew. Sorry, I've forgotten her name again. Roger Ackroyd's. Yeah. So Mrs. Ferrers, he knows she killed her husband, so he blackmails her. Then, so did she? I don't quite remember. Did she actually suicide, or did he kill her too? No, she sent the letter to Roger Ackroyd, right? And then she killed herself.
Yes, that was a suicide. So he killed one person. Responsible.
Well, I mean, he pushed her into he pushed her into suicide. Let's be honest. And then, of course, when he sees Roger Ackroyd receiving this letter, he's like, "Well, I know what that's about," so he kills him, and basically sets up the dictaphone to play Roger's voice, so the time of death is thrown off. And then, as of course he's the first person on the scene, he can quickly put the dictaphone into his black doctor's bag, and the crime scene is cleaned up.
Yes, and he doesn't even need to set up the stepson Ralph, because he doesn't much care. It's just a convenient person to pin the murder on.
Because remember, he was hiding Ralph. Ralph ran away the night of the murder, and he was the one who's hiding him.
Right.
Because that's what made me wonder, like, did he help him hide and stay in hiding because it means no one could hear his side of the story, which means that evidence could continue to pile up against him?
Yes, definitely. I think, especially for how involved Dr. Shepard gets into the murder, he's coming at it from this sort of, I need to control the narrative, I need to control what evidence is found, what evidence is hidden, and point Poirot, who he doesn't know. He just knows him as he knows of the man rather than his famous exploits, and he spends most of the novel trying to manipulate Poirot, while acting as a sort of kind of helpful, cheery partner in solving the murder. The one part about the ending that actually kind of gives me some pause is Shepard, Poirot suggesting that Shepard should rather take his own life to spare his sister the indignity of having him arrested. Which honestly, it feels a little. It felt a little out of character for me, for Poirot. A little. I don't think adding one more body to the count does much, but you know, I'm not Agatha Christie. Maybe as someone who's read more Poirot novels than me, maybe you can.
Well, it's very interesting because, like, usually Poirot has the bad guy arrested, but it's not normal for her to have the murderer as the main character. So, yeah, part of it makes me wonder if Poirot didn't necessarily have sufficient evidence, and so he bluffs and has this man go suicide, because Poirot, above all, hates murderers with a passion. So I don't think he would not, waste any sleep over the fact he told this murderer to go kill himself.
Right.
But yeah, there's numerous situations where Poirot is just bluffing. And so it makes me wonder if this Shepherd dude literally is such a good murderer, so he has to bluff his way in. And when this man is dead, obviously, well, look, he just killed himself. Here's our evidence.
And he is the author of the novel that we're reading.
Yeah.
And it's his confession, which I thought was I thought it was a decent frame device, with the last chapter being a suicide note. Just very. It's funny because Agatha Christie sort of invents a genre, I'd say, of the whodunit murder. I mean, obviously there's other people who have done it, but she definitely perfected it. And the fact that she's able to play with the genre in such a way as she's done here and in some of her other works, it's a credit to her ingenuity as a writer.
So when you were reading this, because obviously I was reading Poirot is literally saying to him, "You're the murderer," and then suddenly I understand. But was there any point where you were getting suspicious of Dr. Shepherd?
No. I think I was on his side, because he was the main character. Yeah. And I think that she does an excellent job of making him likable, and he seems very helpful. And yeah, it's just very well done without seeming sort of hackneyed or cheesy, because one could easily mess this up, I think.
Yeah, or like make Dr. Shepherd a superhero villain who can somehow do everything perfectly. Like, that's always a problem with writing, making the bad guy somehow unrealistically good.
Right. No, I definitely didn't see the ending coming. I actually, for the longest time, I thought it would be Flora who was the murderer.
To be honest, I've read so many Agatha Christie's, I knew it was one of them.
Right.
Which, but I knew it was anyone except Dr. Shepherd, or, I mean, the only thing that would shock me more than Dr. Shepherd was if Caroline did the murder.
Right. So yeah, that's the murder of Roger Ackroyd, a crime of passion, or rather, not a crime of passion, a murder to cover up a blackmailing opportunity. Yeah.
Do they call him crime of opportunity because he was in the right spot at the right time, or because it wasn't premeditated?
Yes, it was. He just happened to have the right timing to do him in, as Eliza Doolittle would say.
And I do think we need to mention, of course, Dr. Shepherd's motives for doing all of this. And basically, as far as I recall, he was happy with his blackmail opportunity after he found the murdered husband. And then he needed to murder Roger Ackroyd, obviously, to cover up his blackmail opportunity. Which is a bit trashy, killing all these people just for... And he didn't appear he had a house, he had funds, money and everything. If he is blackmailing and murdering people.
Well, and that's the thing about the mystery genre, and one of the reasons that the French especially like the noir genre, and this isn't exactly noir, though I'd say it's noir adjacent. Especially French communists like the noir genre and the noir adjacent genres, is that these horrible crimes are committed out of a sense of greed. Right. So if you read or watched The Maltese Falcon, it's this murder mystery plot, all to get a literal piece of art that is priceless. A lot of Chandler books as well are like this, and most whodunits almost always, I'd say, from what I know of the genre, it's almost always either over love or money.
Do you think it's realistic? Thinking about Dr. Shepherd, the whole story, do you think, from what you know of human nature, do you think that situation is... I know Poirot is like not necessarily realistic, but like the generalized situation of someone blackmailing someone, and then obviously to me it's quite realistic to blackmail someone into suicide. I think that's very possible, but murdering someone else on top of that.
Oh, definitely. I think a lot of people, especially once you've made one compromise, let's say a moral compromise, right? It's you've dug yourself into a hole. It's easier then to continue to live in the hole, and dig yourself deeper, right? Because Ackroyd does come off, or not Ackroyd. Shepard does come off as, likable, a doting brother to his sort of
Slightly
infirm
difficult
sister. Yeah. She's difficult. She's infirmed, And actually, one of the things that I really like about their dynamic is that she knows everything that goes on in the town, except for her brother's role in the murder and the suicide.
But surely if she watched him grow up, she would be like, thinks she knows him.
Right.
And I'm sure he must have some element of, no, I don't like the idea of diagnosing characters or anything, but something low empathy or something to murder, because a lot of people would the crime would come out after the person suicides and the blackmail would be revealed, because I don't think everyone is just quick to, like he literally did this on the spur of the moment. Okay, here's this letter, stab this, my old friend of 10 plus years, just stab him in the neck with a knife. Like, you got to be a special kind of person to have it in you to do that.
And I think that what Agatha Christie is showing here is that you don't actually, that and almost anybody has the capacity to do a horrible thing. It's our original sin. It doesn't matter how well brought up someone is, or how well bred they are through generations of good families mixing together. If one wrong decision begets many others, and unfortunately it and this one cost the lives of two people.
Yeah, it's like as one bad decision is made, then one needs to cover up. So more bad decisions are made, and then
Exactly.
there's this big horrible viper's nest of bad decisions about to burst out into the open.
It's funny because I had just covered Crime and Punishment a couple episodes back, and a very, very similar. More psychologizing in Dostoevsky, obviously, than Agatha Christie, but similar motives. A crime of in Crime and Punishment's case, it's premeditated, but they're both crimes of opportunity for material gain, and they're both supposed to be characters that quote unquote know better. The Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment is a university student. He doesn't have the stuff to go through with the murder, and he's actually convinced through poisonous ideology like utilitarianism that he should commit murder.
Was he in a proper, like a reasonable financial situation?
No, he was in dire straits. So different there, definitely.
Because it just shows up, the evil side to human nature when you have a good life, but then you go out to kill in want of more. Because what is Dr. Shepard spending his extra funds on? Gambling? Like his sister would have noticed if he bought nicer clothes or anything like that, or went away on a holiday.
Right, and he doesn't have any children to leave anything to. Yeah, very, very strange. If there is a plot hole, I guess that would be it as to why would he start the blackmail ring.
Well, it has to come down to some flaw of his personal character.
Mm. So, Shield Maiden, where can people find you? How can they support Corncrake magazine? And what can we expect from the magazine in the future?
Yes, well, in the future, I am continuing to publish stories when new writers, I've got some people writing for me who've never written fiction before. And then there's other people who do have their own websites or like yourself, published other stuff whose, stories are putting in there as well. But I also am finding old stories from well into the past. I think in a few magazines' time, I have a story. Sir Walter Raleigh wrote something about a particular battle at sea, and that's from like the 1500s. So that's quite far in the past. So I like a mixture of old and new, focusing on good quality. And then I have a strong emphasis on the art. So I am finding artists who I can show some of their portfolio work with a short interview in the centerfold as well, because I just want to build a sense of community and make people who don't have massive followings on social media, who aren't famous. I want to print their work and put it out there because it is really good. The quality of people's work isn't correlated to their Twitter followers, which in a way is a shame because I think more people should see the work. So that's why I want to print it.
All right, terrific. Well, as I've told you, I'll do as much as I can to help you guys get off the ground. I know how hard it is to launch a magazine. And as soon as you become intense competition, I'll try to grind you into dust.
Well, that is the spirit of capitalism. And charity at the same time. But yes, check out the magazine. It's at corncrakemag.com, and I believe you'll be putting the links to everything.
Yes,
the social
links
in the
links and all the good stuff will be in the show notes below. I want to thank Shield Maiden for coming on. I also want to thank you, dear listener. I did not think that we would get to this many episodes as fast as we did. If you want to support Double Dealer, feel free to buy a magazine. You know where to find them. If you want to become a Substack member, a paid member, we're coming out with some tiers, let's say. Still not sure what that's going to be, but if you become a regular donor to Double Dealer, I'll make sure to have you on an episode of Canon Fodder, and we'll think of some other cool perks for that. I don't really know how to end podcasts, so we're just going to say insert ending here.